I want to talk about Meister Eckhart and Kierkegaard. Now, that's not a normal combination, but you'll see why. I want to talk specifically about authenticity because this is part of a larger project to try and make sense of what religion can look like today. What is viable for people today? What will resonate with them and still be believable? In other words, we're going to be telling this story in the context even of something like Nietzsche's conception of the death of God, where he's specifically calling out certain things as not being believable anymore. And I want to take him seriously, and I want to take others seriously who have said that, they can't believe in a certain form of Christianity. And one of my favorite stories with this is where you have a Catholic priest who is, giving a lecture as a professor and one of his students. And the student, was an elderly lady and had some difficulties with what was going on in the class, personal struggles with spirituality and existential crises, and saying, look, and talking to the professor afterwards one day, look, I can't do this. I'm having a problem with faith. I can't believe in this stuff anymore. And, this idea of a personal God, big brother in a toga, sitting up on a mountain, judging everybody, et cetera, et cetera. I can't believe it anymore. And the priest looked at her very flatly and said, well, neither can I. So let's talk. As if to say, that kind of conception, that doesn't have to be what's going on. There can be something significantly better, subtler, and more interesting. And so I always thought of Eckhart in that context, in saying, with a kind of smile, oh yeah, well, there's a lot more going on here. And so what I take to be important about Eckhart's work is his mysticism, his personality, and that kind of thing. That version of Christianity is something that appeals to people today because it's missing a lot of the elements that people find to be unbelievable. So Eckhart doesn't emphasize hell. He doesn't emphasize the historical Christ. He doesn't emphasize a lot of the stuff that people have trouble with. He emphasizes personal experience, seeing for yourself, a kind of meditation and insight and understanding, going through love, yes, going through knowledge, yes, but beyond that. And beyond that, specifically by way of detachment. Detachment also has been very popular these days because, and I say these days, the last century and a half, with the advent of especially a lot of Eastern ideas coming into the West. And so American Zen and Buddhism, all of these things are becoming more popular at the same time that Eckhart is. And a lot of us who are in Eckhart scholarship are Buddhist, and that's not surprising, I think, because there is so much similarity between the traditions, or at least between Buddhism and what it is that Eckhart is doing with Christianity. So much so that Daisetsu Suzuki was inclined to look at it and say, look, he's doing a lot of the same stuff. Eckhart had a satori. He had an enlightenment experience, and we should take that seriously. I have argued we should take that seriously. So essentially what I'm saying here is that with Eckhart, we have a certain, core of things that appeal to people. And as Cyprian Smith said, that if there's something that appeals to us today with Eckhart, surely it is because it's something that we're missing, like a vitamin in our diet that we're not getting enough of. And we find ourselves hungry for certain foods because we are trying to make up for that deficiency. That's the kind of intuitive feel that there's something missing, there's something wrong. And I think people get that with religion now, in saying that I like certain things about this. I'm inclined to, move in this direction. And maybe I have this nagging feeling that the mechanistic scientific conception of the world is just not all there is. That doesn't canvas everything in human experience. So there's got to be more. But this blind adherence to historical fact and faith in the way that is often advertised, a lot of people find that unbelievable. And so when they find Eckhart, the light opens. They're like, oh, okay, this is great. Maybe this is good. Maybe this is what they need. And that was what Smith was pointing to. And so what I want to suggest is, while that's right, that yes, Eckhart is addressing needs that are currently unmet for a lot of people. While that's right, we can blend in other elements in addition to Eckhart in important ways that are compatible with Eckhart to fill out some of the detail. And Kierkegaard provides us with one of those, with the conception of authenticity. And so what I have in mind here is authenticity understood as a commitment to passion. And so what it is that we are passionate about, in other words, what it is that we love, what it is that we find ourselves drawn to. And so desire draws us in a particular direction, and we are drawn towards things. And we can also think about this in terms of beauty. That was the way that Plato thought about it. And so beauty was precisely the vehicle that carries us from the temporal world of things and shadows all the way to the divine world of the good, the monotheistic form. And so this is later taken up in Christianity, and obviously you have a mechanism of grace and the Holy Spirit carrying people up to the divine. And so that mechanism of beauty, while there is some of this in Eckhart, I think what Kierkegaard offers people is distinctly modern, telling us that we need to be authentic to ourselves, that we need to be what we are. This is the way that he puts it. So authenticity is a process of becoming what we are. So to become what we are is a way of wiping away all of the hindrances and the obstacles and the inauthentic things that we get, especially from society. Eckhart doesn't give us a lot of countercultural sort of, society is poisoning you with that. I mean, he does look down on the corporeal world, and it's just a stepping stone. We have to go beyond it. So it's in there, but it's not emphasized. With Kierkegaard, it's emphasized, and it's emphasized in a way that's really useful to people today and oftentimes speaks to people today, because they do have this sense that the world is holding me down with all of these social conventions, and I'm not allowed to be who I am. And so I need to explore and become more of my authentic self. And now Eckhart, I think if he encountered these sort of ideas, would simply respond, yeah, be who you are. In other words, who you are and what you are at your essence, in your foundation, in your ground, is divine. It's God. So be who you are. Yes, God. And so I think he would have loved this. And I don't think that would have been a problem necessarily for Kierkegaard either. So we have a compatibility here, but a difference in emphasis. And so that's what I want to suggest is useful, is that it's not that Kierkegaard is correcting Eckhart. That's not the case. Kierkegaard is filling out some of the details that we lack in Eckhart's sermons. And it's 700 years ago. Of course, we're going to lack some stuff that is peculiar to what it is that people like now. In other words, Kierkegaard resonates with modern values, in part at least because he is modern. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, although now we're close to 200 years, right? So we may have to update that as well. But Kierkegaard is nice, and the reason that I chose him is because he is also the fountainhead for this tradition. So he is a reactionary movement on the other side of people like Kant and Hegel, and then also Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer also representing a reaction to and pulling away from Kant and Hegel, and especially with Schopenhauer in a distinctly Eastern direction. But with Kierkegaard, what we get is less a philosophic system, which for Schopenhauer, I mean, world is will an idea. It's brilliant, but it's not the same as the kind of thing that I'm pointing to in Kierkegaard, with a passionate commitment to what he calls faith in terms of a more Eckhartian faith, to be honest. And if you haven't seen that, I've addressed that in some detail as well. So I won't do it here. But so no stranger to Eckhart's version, but it is a distinctly ministerial vibe that we get in Kierkegaard, and something that I think is useful for people now because it gives them a foothold. They can say, yes, I need to rebel against whatever it is that I've been given with respect to the things that are preventing me from being authentically who I am. And so by doing that through that passionate and fearless commitment to who I am, then I can go forward, plow forward through being a knight of whatever, that's Kierkegaard's language, and then get to the point where we have become authentic selves. In other words, this is a process in modern metaphorics of describing what it is that Eckhart did with the return to God and trying to wipe away the hindrances. And so his was clothed in something much closer to Dante's theology, which we should expect that. Dante Alighieri of the Divine Comedy. Dante and Eckhart were contemporaries. They were almost the same age, as a matter of fact. Dante may have been a few years younger, but it's hard to say. We don't know Eckhart's birth. So Anyway, that's, I think, interesting, and I hope this provides a useful building block. I'm going to add additional building blocks as we go through time because I see this as a significant project. That's the reason that I ended my book with it, Paradox at Play. So Paradox at Play was a book from Catholic University of America Press that I wrote and was released earlier this year in 2023. And it has sermons from that were previously untranslated from Eckhart's works, and the last chapter of that deals with the future of religion. And so I'm very concerned about how it is that Eckhart fits into the future of religion, how he can help us today and point the way to find other pieces that can help. And so now that's what I'm trying to do, is to flesh that out in terms of finding the other pieces that will help. I think Kierkegaard is one of them. We're also going to talk about Nietzsche, and you may have been thinking Nietzsche if you're familiar with him in terms of the three metamorphoses, the camel, the lion, and the child, because he talks about also just that sort of spiritual itinerary and provides it in a slightly different language in terms of power and will to power and all of that. And so we'll get there. But I wanted to start with Kierkegaard and Authenticity because I think that's something that people can really sink their teeth into. And maybe it will help to know that, yeah, by the way, I think this is totally compatible with Eckhart, and it may point us in a very useful direction for people today. At least I hope so. I'm trying to create something that is even better to think with. We'll see. So I hope it's at least good to think with. We'll find out. So